Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The gentlemen out here in the room, but hopefully they will be among our listeners. As you know, we had 2 previous recording seminar sessions in which a group of young women put to me various questions having to do with sex, man-woman relationships, and related subjects. Some of those previous questioners are back again, and we're going to have another session now. Let's begin with the first question.
You have talked about the importance of expressing negative feelings of a partner in order to keep positive feelings alive. Could you elaborate on this?
I suppose you are referring to a point which I've made not only in public lectures but in the Disowned Self, where I talk about the importance in a relationship of people feeling free to put out negative emotions or feelings toward their mate as a precondition of being able to keep active and living within themselves positive feelings. The reason for that is the following. Now, in the best of relationships, it can happen that there can be friction, there can be misunderstandings, people don't always respond as we would like them to, and across time there can be a build-up of hurt and resentment. If a person feels that it's impermissible to experience or to express those negative emotions and tries to avoid them or disown them or not recognize that he or she has them, the mechanism of repression tends to numb all of their responses toward the person in question, not just the negatives. They begin to disconnect and lose the awareness of what they feel for the particular person, because if they know what they feel, why that anger or hurt or whatever, or resentment, jealousy, whatever it might be, is going to come out. So they have to tune off all of their emotional responses to that person, and then they're up against the painful and to them bewildering fact that a lot of positive feelings are now either gone or much less also, especially sexual desire. That's something we see all the time. The radical drop in sexual desire toward a partner in relationship to whom you are repressing feelings of resentment. So either we're free to know what we feel for a given person or we are not. But we cannot do it selectively. We cannot say we will just carve out and disown the negative or inconvenient emotions and leave everything else flowing freely. It doesn't happen that way.
Nathan, could it be true that there's cause in reality and not just a neurotic feeling for a woman to fear that if she permits herself to form a strong love relationship with a man, that there are great odds against her being able to maintain her inner freedom and independence with the kind of pressures that society still at this time exerts?
It depends what you mean when you say cause in reality. You see, a woman has to know herself. There might be various social or conventional pressures on her, and she may feel that she is not going to withstand them, that the only way that she can preserve her freedom or her independence is never to become deeply involved with a man. Now, if that is the way she sees the issue, she has a problem, all right. But she may be right in the way she is judging herself or in the predictions she is implicitly making regarding her own future behavior. What I don't believe is that the pressures, the so-called pressures of society are such that it is inevitable that a person is going to lose her inner freedom or her independence. I don't see any reason for that. I really don't. It is a fact also that a great many women will relinquish it or give it up, perhaps always, or not always rather, in ways that they are aware of. They can make a lot of small surrenders over issues they take so much for granted that they don't even think about them because of the way they have been brought up. But I really don't see any reason why it should be so, meaning it has to be so. A lot depends on the attitude of the man. Is the man one who really wants the woman to be free and to be independent, or is he also brainwashed by conventional notions, and does he really want somebody who will be an appendage to him, or a boutonniere in his lapel, or who will be willing to subordinate, at any rate, her interests and needs to him? Now, the biggest problem in her life isn't society, it's him. If he has that attitude, or if he has internalized society's attitudes so that he brings it into the relationship, then there's a greater chance that they are in trouble and a greater probability that she may not remain invulnerable to these harmful influences. Turning the whole argument around, I would say that a man today who is aware of this issue ideally should be on guard, as it were, not to let them fall into a pattern without noticing, whereby the wife automatically, or the woman automatically, starts subordinating herself to him. If he's intelligent, he'll know that that's not going to be good for him in the long run either. And they both, ideally, should be aware of the tenacious pull of habit and upbringing and the countless examples we might see in the society around us. And if they really care not to fall into that trap, and they're together in that attitude, I see no reason why they will fall into that trap.
You once said that romantic partners should strive for deeper and deeper levels of intimacy. Could you elaborate on this?
Yes, it's an interesting question. When people first meet and they begin to get to know each other, they talk a lot about themselves, and they are often fairly open about their emotions. Later on in the relationship, one of the great misfortunes is, in too many cases, is that people talk much less, or when they are now sharing a life or sharing an apartment or a household, more of the conversation has to go into practical matters of the conduct of their lives, often at the expense of conversations about purely emotional or personal matters, because they have so much more to talk about of a practical business in terms of the house or management or groceries or whatever the case may be. And the time they spend together can be entirely consumed by that kind of talk that doesn't contribute an awful lot to the intimacy of the relationship. Now, as you move deeper into a relationship where you really get to understand each other's context, it is possible to talk on much deeper levels of intimacy than in the early stages of a relationship, regardless of how passionate you may be, because the other person doesn't yet have the knowledge of the context to follow you down that deep, shall we say. Time is required, familiarity is required, the knowledge of your context is required before you can really open doors that the new person can understand, if at all, only in a fairly general way. But the more a person knows you, it isn't just that you are likely to feel more trusting and therefore more likely to disclose more intimate aspects of yourself. It's also true that the other person is more able to understand you on the more intimate level. For example, I'm often asked questions about maybe sharing sexual fantasies or other kinds of fantasies. If you meet a person in the early stages, especially since fantasies are fairly subjective things, even if that person were to talk about fantasies, you would not necessarily have the same understanding of what it means as you would have 5 or 6 months later after you knew the person much better and you knew how this related to the rest of his or her personality. Fantasies is only one example. I think what is very interesting in a relationship is to always try to reach deeper within yourself. I think that within ourselves it's almost infinite. We can go on and on as we continue to grow and peel off more layers as we grow to understand ourselves better. And it's very nice if people can combine this process, because the interesting thing about self-disclosure is that through self-disclosure we encounter ourselves. No one can know himself fully who has never disclosed himself to another. Partly this pertains to my whole theory of psychological visibility, about which I wrote in The Psychology of Self-Esteem. But it's more than that. That's one reason why therapy can be helpful. As I begin to tell you about myself and struggle to make myself clear and to open doors within me to you,